So it's usually right around this time that the class goes wild when I bust out Mr. Coconut here, because they figure this is it. We're going to see this guy chop his hand off. This is going to be the end of him. And unfortunately, you know what? I didn't bring my machete. So we're going to have to do a little theater of the mind here, right? I think if any of us have seen Gilligan's Island, you don't have to go to Hawaii or Costa Rica or some other tropical, beautiful location to know what's inside of a coconut. It's part of our cultural consciousness. Everyone knows that the inside of the coconut has got some white stuff, right? And that's what they make almond joys out of. And there's some other stuff in there too. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to create a sketch that shows the top of the coconut. Right? And top of the coconut, I gotta say, it's round, but man, it's bizarre looking, you know? Coconuts really are an odd sort of shape. And I guess maybe not the shape, but the face. The little odd face they have. It's like a guy with a mustache or something. Guy with a bad mustache. Alright, so here's what I see on the outside of my coconut. Little coconut head, coconut face. What we want to do is we want to set up a section view. And the kind of section that I'm going to call out here is a half section. Try to keep in mind that the half section has an arrow, and it has one arrow because we look in that direction. It's not going to have another arrow pointing down, another arrow pointing left or right. Most of us, our eyes, we all look in one direction at a time. If you have an eye that looks some other way, well, that's okay, but that's not how the section is set up. So only one view direction from our section. So imagine we took my machete and we split this thing. And we get this interesting shape. There we go. Odd coconutish sort of form there. And we think about, well, where do we cut it? And what are we going to show? Well, we cut it right here. So our section starts here. Let's start with the outside. What's on the outside? Husk. Yeah, there's fuzz, right? So if you wanted to, if you had to, for whatever reason, you're showing the outside, well, the outside is covered in that rough fuzz. That makes the outside of a coconut look like a coconut. All right, what's on the inside? Well, here's where we're going to go with theater of the mind again, okay? We know that there's a thin shell, a real thin shell. And then there's some coconut meat on the inside. That's that white stuff, right? And then if it's a fresh coconut, there might be some other stuff too, right? There might even be some liquid in there, some coconut water. So now how can we show all this stuff? We got 3 different materials, 4 if you count the airspace, right? We got the shell, which is very thin, but one material. We got the meat, which is the second material. We've got the air, and we've got the liquid in there. So this is doable. Let's do the outside first. Generally, things that are very thin, like a piece of sheet metal, or in this case, the husk around the coconut, they do not get sectioned. They're not thick enough to draw section lines in. So they're just drawn with a real thick, heavy line. And people will know that that's some thin material. That's some thin, solid material. The next section will be the meat, the white part of the coconut. And you know, that's solid, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to do some diagonal lines at 45 degrees that show this is solid material. Now the liquid is a separate material, and there's nothing wrong with doing your 45-degree lines in the opposite direction, but you know, there's a bunch of different patterns that are used to indicate solid material. And sometimes it's 45-degree lines, sometimes it's 45-degree lines in both directions. It might be small dots, stippling, it might be shaded in with a different tone, maybe like a light gray. It could be lines, but a pattern line, like little dashes instead of continuous lines. Right, there's a bunch of different ways to show that this and this are two different materials. And then last but not least, we got the big air space in the top, this air pocket. So what do we do to show that there's nothing there, that it is in fact hollow? Well, we don't do anything. We just leave it like it is, because hollow means nothing, and we won't do anything to it if it is hollow. What kind of section are we talking about? Right? Did we cut the coconut completely in half? No, we didn't. We cut a quarter of it out. And that's the thing that's confusing, I think, for a lot of people. When you say I cut it in half, that doesn't make a half section, it makes a full section, right? Because this is fully sectioned. So when we only cut out a quarter, what's left over is a view that's half in section and half not. So this is the half section. Half section. Okay, and this one's a little more complicated because it has multiple materials as part of the coconut assembly. And so for my last example, I was looking at the grocery store for something very specific. I couldn't find it. So again, we're going to have to do theater of the mind. What I was looking for was a chunk of cheese. Specifically Swiss cheese, and this Swiss cheese, I had a real specific thing in mind. I need a piece of Swiss cheese with 3 holes in it. You can probably kind of see now why this was hard for me to get exactly what I was looking for. Alright, so couldn't find the exact kind of Swiss cheese I was looking for, so we're going to imagine this one together, okay? Now, the Swiss cheese has got 3 holes in it, and I would like to create a technical drawing of my chunk of Swiss cheese. I'm going to incorporate a section view. The problem is the hole here and the hole here and the hole here are on 3 different levels, 3 different planes. They don't line up with each other. If all 3 holes were in a row, I could make one drawing over here and show the 1 hole, the 2nd hole, and the 3rd hole, right? But they're not in a row. So this is going to mean I need to make 3 drawings. So in my first drawing, I'm going to make a cutting plane line that goes through the first hole. And it's going to look to the left. And then we want to show here what we cut through. Okay, and that first hole, you know what, went all the way through the piece of Swiss cheese. So that's a hole, and the rest of this is solid. Now that's nice, but it doesn't show this hole or this hole. So that means I need to make another cutting plane. And I think you know the drill. If we have more than one, we need to letter them. And here we need to identify which one is which. So here I'm going to come over, I'm going to make my second section view. And that's where the hole is. And you know what? This hole doesn't go all the way through. It goes most of the way through, but not all the way. But you really can't tell that from the front, right? Well, the section view is going to reveal that. So here's our section lines. I'll put our little tag on there, and we'll say this is section BB. Very good. Well, you understand what the problem is. We got our last hole, and we haven't revealed anything about it. So I'm going to create a third cutting plane line. Nice and heavy with our pattern. Long to short, bend at the end. And I'll project over, I'll set up the depth of the part. Bring over the hole to the side here. And we see that this hole is a counterfeit. It's not even a hole, it's a dimple. Yeah, the hole started, but it didn't go all the way through or even close to halfway through. So it's just a little bump. So it's a good thing we made this complicated drawing of this piece of cheese, because just looking at the front, we wouldn't have known how deep the holes are, or if they're all the way through, or part of the way through, or just little air bubbles like this one was. And then of course we'll identify it with a CC. Alright, wow, that was a lot of work. That was an awful lot of work to show 3 different features that don't line up in section. Okay, so to avoid having to do all that work and to make 3 cutting plane lines, which is a ton of work, not to mention all that section lining that you're going to have to draw with tools perfectly spaced. Oh my gosh, let's try to minimize the work, right? So when we have a case like this, when we have things that don't line up but we want to show them in section, we're going to make a different kind of drawing. So let's go back to our original piece of Swiss cheese. And that original piece of Swiss cheese had a hole here, and a hole here, and a hole here. And we can project over to show its height and its depth. And then what we're going to do with the cutting plane is revolutionary. See, because I don't want to make 3 drawings. I want to make 1 drawing if I can get away with it. And the fact is, you can get away with it. So look at my cutting plane, what it's doing here. My cutting plane is bending. It's bending at 90 degrees, and it's cutting through each of the 3 different features I want to see. And we will draw an arrow here, and we will draw an arrow here. And then what I can do is I can bring over the location of hole number 1. And I can bring in the location of hole number 2, which doesn't go all the way in. And I can bring over the location of dimple number 3, which only goes in a little wee bit. And now what I got is I have 1 drawing that shows all 3 conditions here as sections. And I didn't have to make 3 drawings and 3 cutting plane lines and miles of section lines. So hey, that's a win for me. That's a time saver. Okay, and these things are called offset sections. Offset section. And it's because the cutting plane isn't straight, it offsets through each of the features we want to hit. So this is an offset section. Okay, and since there's only 1 cutting plane and 1 section view, we don't have to letter them. Just overall a win for everybody. Alright, so we've got a way to save time when we've got things that don't line up that need to be shown in section. We don't make lots of section drawings with multiple cutting planes. We make 1 offset section and it can hit all of them.